Okay, so hey guys and welcome back to another Sport This Week video, and in today's video I am got NFL, tennis, baseball, rugby, football, UFC, Moto GP, ice hockey, cricket, and yeah, I believe that is all the sports. So if you're new around here and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need like the video, and let's get straight into it. So starting off this week, I'm going to start off with the NFL news. So Buccaneers won 19-3 versus Cowboys, Chiefs won 27-24 versus Chargers. Pressuit is out for multiple weeks. Adams is out for the season. Watt has been placed on the injury reserves. Dolphins won 42-38 versus Ravens. Buccaneers won 20-10 versus Saints. Patriots won 17-14 versus Steelers, and Rams won 31-27 versus Falcons. And yeah, that's all the tennis news. Moving on to the that's all the NFL news. Moving on to the tennis news now, whereas the WTA Porto Rose. And so Raducanu won 1-0 versus Yastremska, and then Raducanu lost 2-1 versus Friedstam. And it was also the Davis Cup this week, where Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Dugaz. Alcaraz lost 2-1 versus Auger Aliassime. Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Mansouri. And Federer is set to retire next week, as he says he probably will after the end of the tournament which he's taking part in, which I can't remember the name of, but sometime next week, which is a real shame, as I mean he's been a great tennis player. He's obviously not in his prime anymore, which makes sense why he's retiring, but he's had a very great career. And Alcaraz won 2-0 versus Kwon. Siniakova won 2-1 versus Rybakina to win the women's singles WTA Porto Roz. And yeah, moving on to the baseball news now. Astros won 7-0 versus Tigers. Dodgers won 6-0 versus Diamondbacks. Astros won 6-3 versus Tigers. Yankees won 7-6 versus Red Sox. Dodgers won 4-0 versus Diamondbacks. Astros won 2-1 versus Tigers. Yankees won 5-3 versus Red Sox. Dodgers lost 5-3 versus Diamondbacks. Astros won 5-2 versus Athletics. Red Sox won 2-1 versus Royals. Astros won 5-0 versus Athletics. Yankees lost 7-6 versus Brewers. Dodgers won 5-0 versus Giants. Red Sox lost 9-0 versus Royals. Yankees lost 4-1 versus Brewers. Astros lost 8-5 versus Athletics. Dodgers won 7-2 versus Giants. Red Sox won 13-3 versus Royals. And Yankees won 12-8 versus Brewers. And Astros won 11-2 versus Athletics. And yeah, that is all the baseball news. Moving on to the rugby news now. Where New Zealand won 39-37 versus Australia, and South Africa won 36-20 versus Argentina. And yeah, that is all the rugby news. Moving on to the football news now, where Karius has joined Newcastle, Costa has joined Wolves, Jakupovic has joined Everton, Inter won 2-0 versus Pleasant, Sporting won 2-0 versus Spurs, Liverpool won 2-1 versus Ajax, Bruges won 4-0 versus Porto, Leverkusen won 2-0 versus Atletico, Bayern won 2-0 versus Barcelona. Frankfurt won 1-0 versus Marseille. Schofield has been sacked by Huddersfield. Milan won 3-1 versus Zagreb. Shakhtar drew 1-1 versus Celtic. Napoli won 3-0 versus Rangers. Chelsea drew 1-1 versus Salzburg. Real Madrid won 2-0 versus Leipzig. Man City won 2-1 versus Dortmund. Copenhagen drew 0-0 versus Sevilla. Benfica won 2-1 versus Juventus. PSG won 3-1 versus Hawaii. Tony has been called up to the England squad for the first time. Where am I? Bodo Glimt won 2-1 versus Zurich. AEK Larnaca won 1-0 versus Kiev. Rennes drew 2-2 versus Fenerbahce. Betis won 3-2 versus Ludogorets. Roma won 3-0 versus HJK. St. Galois won 3-2 versus Malmo. Braga won 1-0 versus Union Berlin. Midtjylland won 5-1 versus Lazio. Feyenoord won 6-0 versus Sturm. Manu won 2-0 versus Sheriff. Sociedad won 2-1 versus Omonia. Freiburg won 3-0 versus Olympiacos. Qarabag won 3-0 versus Nantes. Trabzonspor won 2-1 versus Crvena Zvezda. Ferencvaros won 1-0 versus Monaco. Hearts won 2-0 versus RFS. Istanbul Basaksehir won 3-0 versus Fiorentina. Villarreal won 2-1 versus Bier. Sheva. Lech won 4-1 versus Vienne. FCSB drew 0-0 versus Anderlecht. West Ham won 3-2 versus Silkeborg. Partizan drew 1-1 versus Nice. Cologne won 4-2 versus Slovako. Sivasspor won 1-0 versus CFR Cluj. Slavia Prague won 3-2 versus Balkany. Djurgården won 3-2 versus Molde. Ghent won 3-2 versus Shamrock. Basel won 1-0 versus Azala Greece. Pivinik won 2-0 versus Slovan Bratislava. Dnipro won 3-1 versus Apollon. AZ won 4-1 versus Vaduz. Foster has announced his retirement. Haaland is player of the month. Arteta is manager of the month. St. Maximin got goal of the month. Fulham won 3-2 versus Forest. Villa won 1-0 versus Southampton. Arsenal won 4-0 versus Brighton. Man U won 4-0 versus Reading. Spurs won 6-2 versus Leicester. Man City won 3-0 versus Wolves. Newcastle drew 1-1 versus Bournemouth. Augsburg won 1-0 versus Bayern. Dortmund won 1-0 versus Schalke. Bremen drew 1-1 versus Leverkusen. Mönchengladbach won 3-0 versus Leipzig. Carroll has joined Reading. De Zerbi is the new Brighton manager. Udinese won 3-1 versus Inter. Arsenal won 3-0 versus Brentford. Monaco won 3-0 versus Reims. Marseille drew 1-1 versus Rennes. Fiorentina won 2-0 versus Verona. Monza won 1-0 versus Juventus. Everton won 1-0 versus West Ham. Union Berlin won 2-0 versus Wolfsburg. Villarreal drew 1-1 versus Sevilla. Atalanta won 1-0 versus Roma. PSG won 1-0 versus Lyon. Napoli won 2-1 versus Milan. Real Madrid won 2-1 versus Real Madrid won 2-1 versus Atletico Madrid. And yeah, that is all the football news. I know a lot of news this week. Hopefully I didn't pronounce the names too wrong. But yeah, moving on to boxing news now, where there is also quite a lot of news. Zanetti versus Bean, Swarms versus Hamby, Bunker versus Howe, Slim versus Taylor, Ham versus DTG, Taylor versus Raksu, and Wet versus Keeley will fight on the 15th of October. Kodva won via points versus Hardy. Obadiah won via points versus Strivkowski. Smith won by TKO in round 1 versus Holt. Abdullah won by TKO in round 4 versus Nikolai. Ali won via points versus Barroza. Mohammed won by TKO in round 5 versus Taylor. Arnold lost via TKO in round 4 versus May Renner. Zorro won by points versus Spellman. Bentley won by TKO in round 4 versus Morrison to remain British middleweight champion. Williamson won by TKO in round 4 versus Benitez. Gardner won by points versus Cesario Antin. Arthur won via TKO in round 6 versus Gabriel Sequeira. Drew versus Woodruff to remain British lightweight champion. Wood has pulled out of the fight versus Lara due to injury. Lomachenko will fight Ortiz on the 29th of October. Herrera won by stoppage versus McKinley. Castro won by a KO in round 5 versus Mendoza. Aponte drew versus Molina. Pacheco won via TKO in round 5 versus Kozalo to become WBC United States Super Middleweight Champion. Akhmedov won via unanimous decision versus Rosado to become IBF North American and WBC Silver Super Middleweight Champion. Williams won via unanimous decision versus Conway to become WBA International Middleweight Champion. Rodriguez won via unanimous decision versus Gonzalez to remain WBC World Super Flyweight Champion. Canelo won via unanimous decision versus Golovkin to remain IBF WBA Super, WBC and WBO World Super Middleweight Champion, which I did predict right on the Mo Boxing No Problem channel. If you haven't gone and checked that out, please go and do that. There was a group prediction which was a very fun video to do, and hopefully we can do another one again. But yeah, I did predict that Canelo would win. I said it was in a late TKO, but that was wrong. But yeah, moving back on to boxing news. Williamson will fight Kelly in December, and Bunn will fight McCrory on the 22nd of October. And yeah, that is all the boxing news. Moving on to the cricket news now. Well, there's only one bit of news, and that is England won by 9 wickets versus South Africa. And I don't think there'll be too much cricket news from now on because it is kind of the end of the cricket season. So yeah, moving on to the ice hockey news now. Rodriguez has signed a 1-year deal with Avalanche. Ikirov has signed an 8-year deal with Blues. Moat has signed a 1-year deal with Senators, and Dersey has signed a 2-year deal with Kings. And yeah, that is all the ice hockey news. Moving on to the UFC news now. Cannonier will fight Strickland on the 17th of December. Qatar will fight Allen on the 29th of October. Rodriguez won via KO in round 2 versus Jokurari. And Sandhagen won by KO in round 4 versus Yadong, and Aldo has announced his retirement, which is a shame to see him go, Aldo, because he is a legend of the sport, but you know his time had to come, and he is coming off a defeat against Dvalishvili, so that's fair enough. But yeah, moving on to the final sport, which is Moto GP now. where Marini to stay with VR46 Racing Team in 2023, Nakagami to stay with LCR Honda in 2023, Marquez to return at the Aragon Grand Prix, Fernandez to move to Moto GP in 2023 with Gas, and then it was the Aragon Grand Prix where Bagnaia was on pole, Miller started second and Bastianini started third. In the end, Bastianini won, Bagnaia came second and Espargaro came third, with Marquez, Quartararo and Nakagami not finishing. And yeah, that is all of the news for this week. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, do like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.